we can have a secondary classification process. And these tend to rely on the fact that different sized chips will weigh different amounts. And one way of doing classification is to put chips in an airstream. So if we have a tower and we put chips in that tower and we have an agitation of those chips using an airstream, the big chips are going to be at the bottom and the medium-sized chips are going to be somewhere in the middle, and the small stuff's going to be at the top, because obviously the smaller things are, the lighter they are, so they're going to get blown to the top. So it's a question of a balance between the air resistance, which is to do with the size, and the weight, obviously, which is also to do with the size. The other factor which can also affect this behaviour is the moisture content, and there we have to decide whether we're going to have chip drying before this secondary classification or before the secondary classification. It probably makes more sense to have drying of chips before this, because otherwise we've got an additional variable in that the different chips may have different moisture contents, and also they're going to be drying out in the classifier, so that's going to upset the classification process. So it would make a lot more sense to dry the chips out prior to that, and I'll talk about that soon. So yeah, that's an air classifier, very commonly used. But you can also use other types of classifiers which are centrifugal, or rely on the fact that a heavier chip will be flung further. So if you throw them off a wheel, then the heavier chip's going to go there, the middle chips are going to go there, and the lighter chips are going to go there. Quite commonly, this type of classification in a particle board mill is just before, or just at the point where what's called the furnish, yes, is thrown onto the belt where the board is being made. So you'll have a centrifugal classifier throwing chips onto that surface. And the reason to do that is to give some sort of variation between the outside of the board and the inside of the board. And that gives a better board quality, because the surface you want to be smooth, the inside you're not so bothered about. They didn't used to do this, they didn't used to bother, and the old particle boards used to be, well, rubbish, quite frankly. A lot of sophistication now goes into ensuring that particle boards have this variation in property between the inside and the outside to give a much smoother finish, particularly if you're then going to put a laminate on the top, like an MUF impregnated paper. You might be making kitchen units and you might be wanting to put a wood effect on the surface. You don't want to have sort of wrinkles and bumps. You don't want to have this show through of the particle board in the surface.